Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Everhart Museum's second Sunday Folk Art Series. We are honored to partner with the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts to bring you each second Sunday a different folk and traditional artist from across the 6 counties of northeastern Pennsylvania that we serve. In the Endless Mountains, this includes Wyoming and Susquehanna counties, in the Valley cities, Lackawanna and Luzerne counties, and in the Pocono Mountains, Wayne and Pike counties. And today we are coming to you from the studio of Nina Kouznetsov, who has been an honored folk and traditional artist on the roster at the Everhart Museum. Nina, thank you so much for bringing us into your home and to sharing with us the joys of your art, which are especially poignant at this time of year that's sacred to so many different cultures. So welcome, Nina, and thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly, and I'm honored to participate and share my art and depths of its meaning with the community and with all people who will be able to listen.
There is so much to say today. If we had a month, we would just begin to scratch the surface of the knowledge that you have, not only of the traditional iconography, which we look forward to learning about, but also the sacred music that you have been trained in since you were a child. So we're going to dive into learning about you as an artist and touching some of the deeper truths of your traditional art as well. So. Maybe we could even talk about what are your ideas of a traditional art, and at what point does it cross into the level of almost a sacred practice, which borders on a sacred art as well?
Well, this is a very deep question. I want to start with my early childhood and just to say that I've been raised in the Soviet Union, which was an atheistic country, so we didn't know anything about sacred in a way other than what would seep through beautiful music and or beautiful paintings or some amazing architecture, nature, and those things. So my idea of sacred was developing outside of normal definition of words, you could say, because as I was studying in that special music school that required total dedication to beauty and excellence of music, I was seeing that the deeper you go, the more undescribable levels you can touch that is not possible to put into words because it has to be only experienced. So I learned, which is really changed my mind gradually, that words, according to psychology, amount only for about 10% average what somebody perceives out of communication. And big part, maybe 40%, comes of the tone of voice, or another way of modern saying it, its frequency of vibration, which music is perfect, even without words. So coming later on to a sacred music, it was already when I became a Christian, because first almost 30 years of my life, I was just an intellectual secular musician and did a little poetry maybe. So it took understanding that, and the same it is for iconography. Later on I'll go how I started learning it. But the same that this special vibration, that what makes it sacred, not necessarily the words, because sense of sacredness amount to that indescribable frequency of vibration that
Right.
is in music. It's no words required, really, and it holds it. Sound is very powerful sense in this, and image is also very powerful. It bypasses conscious mind, and it goes deeply into subconscious.
Right.
And image also have its own vibration of silence. There is even in a Orthodox tradition, from Greek Orthodox, they have a special word for it called hesychia, which means like a charged, vibrant silence. It's not like I would sit on a sofa and relax and all of this, but it's when you perceive the mystery of the universe, and this kind of silence is possible through iconography that is done well in a very high level of consciousness. And the same thing, as I now understand, is possible to express through music, even be it as secular music, but on a very high level of contemplative type of music. I only now started really understanding some classical composers that either slow movement of sonata or some such. It's so basically I call it different facets of God's creativity that is given, and they're possible to express the same thing, considering that people are perceiving a little different. So in this way, it only happened. You asked me, when did it happen? For me, understanding it came just recently, maybe after 20 years of doing iconography. I just started to see some similarity, because before it was just like a craft, and like technique in music, you have to be very skillful in one area, and then it didn't have in my mind any connection other than it's done for the church.
Right. I love that idea that you brought forward. You know, there's so many concepts that you covered, but one, you know, that it takes time. And you talked about, even as a child, you knew that the more skilled you became at your, as you just said, craft, whether it be music, whether it be movement, whether it be artistry, or the more skilled you become, the deeper you can go inside something. And it's only after that, and sometimes after 20 years or after 50 years of really practicing that, that you come into that place, that word you described, that charged, that charged contemplative silence.
And I could probably, I was referring to craft as a technical part of the art, because to play piano beautifully, it's not a craft by any stretch of imagination. And the same thing for the performing art as iconography. You need to be a real master to be able to express your soul in material way, whether it's, this is just, iconography is specifically created for that. So icon is like divine image. So you are painting yourself, you're writing your own image. And in this sense, this is what I say to, part of the things that I say to beginners, all of us are icon writer in a sense that by default or consciously, we are creating our image out of ourselves. And this is the main purpose of iconography. It's like a visual aid to us. And of course, we are producing icons that can be seen by others, and but the deeper meaning of it is as a sacred symbolic iconography. It's to show how matter becomes enlightened and how divine image can be seen with mere eyes, like in a halo of
Right.
all the images, and like, for example, and now or modern technology can even measure that
Yeah.
field around the body or around the plant, around animals, and you
Right.
know,
It's
really
wonderful, isn't it?
special.
Would it be accurate to say, from what you are saying, that iconography is like translating spirit into a visual form using the language of iconography? So you were talking about symbols. So there are several languages in the world that use symbols rather than letters for a concept. And is iconography a kind of a visual language?
Yes, it's a special language that uses lighting, then it uses lines in a special way with a reverse perspective. It's a whole big special thing. I can touch upon it later on, and colors. So there is a certain tradition in that, and other things becomes revealed as you go, because it's well, it's almost like when students are making the icon, even though they're using the same image, you can see personality even in the same pattern. You can see, because people are painting either themselves or somebody they're thinking about when they're doing it. So it's and even to the point that their difficulty in life are seen, where some steps are easy for some people and for others they're difficult, and it's usually translates that in their life they have those obstacles, those lessons in life that needs to be overcome. So it's very mystical and deep-seated knowledge that a lot of times it cannot be verbalized. It has to be experienced, and it's a meditative practice. And it took me almost a whole life to understand it, because, like I said, we've been so heavily invested in expressing things. And well, there is a saying, like in Russia too, there are many priests, but not many saints. And for that reason, if somebody has a book knowledge and they're doing their best to say, it doesn't get through because it doesn't come from experience. So whatever experience somebody has, even if it's imperfect, it could be imperfect icon on a board, but it could be perfect in a way to show how somebody is defenseless and intuitive and sincere. And this is precious, because they moved from the mind to the heart. And this also took me almost entire life to do, because it was discouraged. I was in church for so many years and knew all the right words and all of that, but somehow it didn't come to understing.
We could cover this for hours and hours.
Yes,
I love this.
hours and hours we
I
can
want to.
go.
And we would be full of joy to do so. But I want to jump to your childhood too, because you grew up in Ukraine. Did you grow up in Kiev? Am I correct? Kiev? How do you Kiev? And you were involved in a musical family. Is that correct? Your mother was very.
You could say that my mother was not professional, but she was gonna be professional if teaching style was different. And she came to the level of high school or a college, junior college for music. And her teacher was using ruler to hit her hands, which was apparently accepted practice at that time. So she quit and she became a bookkeeper, like doing completely different thing. And she still played for herself, and she was singing and playing piano up until her passing some years ago. So when I was born, I didn't have to think whom will I be, because it was predestined. They told me, I don't remember when I was 2 years old, they told me at a big table at the party gathering, they put me on a table and I had to sing. And my mom was accompanying. So, and then we lived in a tiny, tiny room, one room of a big apartment with 4 other families sharing bathroom and kitchen. But still, 5 of us lived there, mother, father, my brother, and a grandmother. And it's not a big room, but they still fit. When I was almost 6 years old, they got a upright piano for me,
Wow.
which was a big sacrifice, as I understand now. And I started to play piano. And then I entered regular music school. There are many, many of those music schools in every city. And in Kyiv, there was about 45 of them through the 8th grade. Well, I didn't stay until I was there maybe for 3-4 years. And then I came to the best music school that I graduated later on. You had to compete, and there are some politics how to get there. So it's probably like in other countries too. So when I got there, and at first I had a very good teacher. She had to undo everything that I knew more, completely new hand position. And this happened to actually my son too with violin. So if you don't get a very good teacher from the start, then somebody else, when somebody is experienced good teacher, have to change everything. But then I got, and this teacher was good, but she didn't believe in me. She didn't believe that I had talent, because I was from a like they call it simple family. My mothers or fathers, they were not like here professors or somebody like, so they didn't know. Well, it happens there. But then somebody else I started to study, and she believed in me, and she inspired me, and she promoted my creativity, and I really blossomed. I felt the sacredness in a way. We didn't call it that way, but we call it spiritual perspective, not in the sense they call it in America, because people, churches were not open, you could say, and nobody spoke about God, only in a strange way, like Bach believed in God. It's because it was 300 years ago and he didn't know any better, and we are now so like modern and progress. So I mean, they had their take on things. And so even seeing starry sky or anything that makes our heart move, it's that stops time, that makes us into presence, into now, to eternity, whatever way it comes. People, of course, in Russia are very deep in a way of not just being outwardly, let's say, churchgoers because nobody were going to church. Actually, they've been persecuted. When I was baptized, I had to do it in secret because you would definitely lose your job or had a lot of trouble. Many people being idealistic through the knowledge of classical literature, music, poetry being required, which I treasure that poetry being really required in our upbringing in the schools.
And you could call it that they were very tuned into what we might call the inward life, as opposed to the, you know, the outer life of what we do for a job, what we do in the community. We have a life inside of us.
People more cared about what you say and what you do, rather than where you live or whatever else. So this was actually a difficulty for me when I immigrated, because I couldn't find people I could connect to for a long while until I actually entered this iconography school. It's School of Iconography and Iconology. That's a new word, because iconology, it's that theoretical part.
The study of, the theory
study of symbols, what this means. And just to give you an example, my studio bears a name after Saint Andrei Rublev, who is the most famous Russian iconographer. This is his style of Russian iconography. He lived in 15th century. He didn't write in the words a saint, but he was called a saint because of such a profound sense of otherworldliness and eternity that his icons produced. It's this what makes such a big difference when somebody comes and church has this surrounding. Almost you don't need anything else. Like somebody is singing something, well, yes, it's good. Chanting, not just singing. It's a different story that it was more chanting when it's done appropriately. But you already in those vibes, in these frequencies that people prayed over century. So it's the same, you come to the room where somebody was fighting right now, you can feel the sick air, or where you see that somebody being love and kindness spreading everywhere. So
I love that there's so many different aspects that people can tune into, not only the visual of the iconography, but as you said, the vibration of it, and you talked about the elements of light and line or reverse line and of color, and each one of those things have a different frequency, and each one of those things is a different way for someone to enter into the understanding of that visual language. When you were a child, you finished the higher level of the music school, and then you went to conservatory as well. So
in Moscow, which was better. And I am atheistic cultural Russian, but my blood is Jewish, and they don't need to see in a passport. They could see my picture, and they're very anti-Semitic in Ukraine, especially. Russia a little bit better. So I was like they call it golden medal, which means straight A's. I was very exceptionally graduated under conservatory teachers. This was a special school in Kiev. And they kind of politely hinted to me, it doesn't matter how bright you are, you have a better chance elsewhere. So that's what I did. And in Moscow, of course, there is a better education, but this was a reality of life. You had to be 3 times better just to survive. I loved learning and thank my parents for it. They instilled the love of learning since my kindergarten years. It works.
So after, and I wish we had hours and hours, but I want to, so the basis of what I'm trying to explain to everyone watching is the level of study that you have as a classical musician. And that fine honing of your physical technique so that you can enter into those higher realms of communication that then left you, and that love of learning and that love of developing your inner space. When you came to the United States, it left you feeling really longing for anyone to talk to on this level and people to communicate with about higher levels of existence.
Yes, understanding reality, because in our school, it was not only about music, it was also understanding like aesthetics and beauty and painting, artists, philosophy. It was, Moscow was like a hub, a center of all the cultural things that happened, like New York, perhaps. So it was just amazing years that I was truly disappointed when I came to Philadelphia with my parents, and my son was young at that time, because I just didn't understand how people can be interested in what they're interested. So I just couldn't comprehend it. And at that time, few months before that, I met that iconography master that I met in Philadelphia. He was Russian too. So his wife said, with your education, you can easily become a choir director. It never occurred to me, because in Russia, unless you have a degree in directing, you just cannot even start thinking about it. So my friend at that time told me, you need to look to be a choir director in a Russian, American Russian Orthodox church. So I called just 2 spots. I didn't want to be far from my parents in Philadelphia. So I called New Jersey and I called Northeastern Pennsylvania, Bishop. And they told me that, yes, there is a spot here in Old Forge with a house, not big salary, but for me, it was tremendous salary. And all of that time, I was going almost weekly, every other week, to take iconography, because in my consideration of coming here, it was a little closer to where my master iconographer lived in upstate New York. Versus it was only hour 20 minutes, rather than from Philadelphia, it was more than 2 hours. So that was, I was doing it for 2 years, because I was not artist. I just listened to lectures. It was very fascinating symbolics. But then the master impressed on me that it is, you have to forget about everything you know, and that's what I teach now. I was teaching many artists, professional, and it's sometimes harder because they have bigger ego, you can say, that they think they know, and this doesn't work in a spiritual discipline. If you think you know, you'll make mistakes there. You'll put your paint will just drop on your icon, or something will happen to make you humble. Yeah, so,
Those are
but
the-
it took me 2 years to realize that I can attempt to start painting.
Well,
because
you
I-
also filled yourself with what you were the most hungry for, which was the philosophy of it,
Yes.
spending time inside of that philosophy. So that 2 years was probably very well spent before you began to pick up the brush and then have your own practice.
And I
beginning.
became a part of that family, like from Russia. And I was like, I called it court musicians. They had a good Steinway, so I could always play and on their gatherings and with other iconographers. But I felt a little bit like an imposter for some years, for enough years.
Because you were not an artist beforehand.
Professional artist.
Yeah.
And
well, it's like
so
your teachers had to retrain you from your first teacher. You know, it's similar. Sometimes it's easier to get the student who is not have a muscle memory that you have to retrain something. So.
But probably you would be interested. I know that you had this question too. The style of teaching in Russia, or Russian teacher, even if in America, it's different. In music too. So, and as now I understand, it comes from philosophical perspective, spiritual perspective, as nothing is perfect. You are imperfect no matter what you do. So instead of encouraging students, they say that, oh, this is not perfect. If you do it completely perfect, they might say, well, it's not bad, but still you can improve on this. But my master teacher was like that, especially from a Russian speaking students. They knew that we are tough, so we need to be really humbled and be frustrated and sit. And so that was part of education. I don't subscribe to this anymore, just for simple reasons that God is love, and it doesn't seek to punish you, and suffering is optional. So it's it's not the way to reach progress. So,
and stepping now into the idea of the iconography itself, is it known now? You are specifically in the field, as you mentioned, of traditional iconography of the Byzantine tradition. Is that correct?
I would say it started from Byzantine and in Russian. It is somewhat different from a Greek, because Greek, they have, of course, earlier tradition than Russian. Started in the 10th century, but Greek started earlier. Iconography is been done with egg tempera, which was mainly used with anything. It was artists, Renaissance artists, as we know before, they all used egg tempera for its superior fineness of expression. And we can use here even the way we grind pigments. It could be more coarse or less coarse than all of that floats or layers. So in traditional iconography, we do it 2D, two-dimensional. So we don't try to think that this is how the person looked, because this is one
it's
of
a representation, not a
one of the aspects is a historical, and it's historical is not mystical or as important as what icon represents as a symbol of going from darkness to light, and with a process. Well, the purpose of the icon to move somebody from mind to the heart within, and that's why it's appropriate. I can show here. I brought, this is a usually beginners start with this icon of Saint Michael, usually like that. It's after pattern of Saint Andrei, 15th century, with a little variation. So if you see how lines are going, so lines is one of the three methods we are expressing in a traditional icon. Curls in a hair. Well, icons don't have a body, so it's all symbolic. They are bodiless hosts. But this is for us to see that it's a spiral. It's a spiral that's going within, towards the heart. Now, on the garments, you can see that it's not like even curvy, flexible. This is like, we call it a female spiral. It's very flexible. Like here, a lot of times you cannot see it precisely, but somewhere where you see one line and it's abruptly stops, and from it something else comes. And so it's like a spiral that is, we call it like a male spiral. It's also going within, inside, only it's going more in a forceful way. Well, I can compare it like you do something, you go in one direction and you are sure that you are right until you stop and see, no, it's not where I'm supposed to go.
Okay.
So you abruptly stops. And this is the actually meaning of a metanoia or repentance. It doesn't have a guilt trip at all. It means that you realize that you will miss the mark, which is original meaning of what the sin is. You'll miss where you want to go. So you're changing direction and you're correcting the course. And why it's two-dimensional? Well, first of all, because we don't want it to look like a 3D, as if we pretend to know how God looks or somebody looked that we don't know. I want to just mention about reverse perspective. This is the main method that differs from Western paintings that we know. Western painting have idea we know all Western paintings, regular idea of direct perspective. Whatever's farther from me is smaller on the paintings and in reality, right? It has deep philosophical meaning, spiritual meaning, that I am a center and everything else, including God, is somewhere else and it's smaller than me. So reverse perspective does the opposite. It makes what's farther from me bigger, that I am smaller, and something that unknowable is bigger and I cannot comprehend it. And well, I'm trying, and I believe in that benevolent power. And the way you see it in icon, like look at this structure. You can see it from this side, from the top, and from this, and it's in that way, it doesn't meet the same proportion as we would say. This what's happening. I really didn't understand and like icon when I was growing up, because I thought, oh, some people who didn't know how to paint, they just did something, whatever they did. And so this is like an example. So, or something that is out of proportion, something that is far away, if it becomes very big, or some person becomes like very big and they're supposed to be small. So it's a significance, and not just trying, okay, since I hold it already, I can explain this is important. What's mystical about that, and why it's different from a historical perspective? Like this particularly indicates, well, this subject of Annunciation, Archangel Gabriel, that it's covered, it's hidden, it's a veil. So something happened in the inner chamber. And what is happening? Annunciation. Unless you feel as a spiritual person that grows innerly, that your inner divine image, or Christ, we refer to it, is seeded in you. This is the beginning of the spiritual awakening, as we call it. So you become pregnant with it, so, and it grows. So it's first stage. So this is the most important. And let's say this icon, or tenderness, it's a different position of mother and a child, which we called, well, it's Mary and Jesus, right? But not only. This is historically Mary and Jesus, but this is the stages of development of that holy child within the person. It's timid. It still need to be close to the mother, cheek to cheek, and she protects it. It's parenting the spirit within, and how it grows. And then another stage that he is like 12 years old and he is already not clinging to her, more independent, with a scroll, have a teaching within. So, and then Oranta is Lady of the Sign, when he is like here in a sphere, is like a mystical Christ, like in, let's say, in the communion, and she is there already, doesn't hold him, he is free floating. So it's a most mystical image of that type, and it was very popular in medieval times too. But it's all about personal development. When you start identifying more with your divine image, which is immortal, rather than your suit of skin and bones, which is going to be discarded. Right. So, and this is what iconography is about. Every icon is about transfiguration. It's ascending on the Mount Tabor, inner ascending on a level of consciousness when you can see clearly that who you are.
And the iconography is the language that helps bring those very weighty philosophical concepts into understanding, yes, on a physical plane. So this is, again, that language.
Mind is over matter. How we invite the Holy Spirit. That's why at the end of the iconography, we pray before we start and invite the person we are painting to be present with us, because we do our part, but we don't pretend that it depends on us. I mean, we are doing our best. It's the same like in our life. I do what I can, but I cannot control what transpires somewhere else. So it's big responsibility, and in this way, it's.
Well, I love that about so many traditional arts from different faith backgrounds, that the art is a huge responsibility. It carries the essence of the culture, of the spirit life of that culture. And inside different cultures, there are so many different expressions of the deeper life. And And I thank you. I mean, the concepts behind it are always so important. And I know you have so much more that you want to tell us about. So please continue.
Okay, and
yeah.
well, let me continue. What else I wanted to say, that it's well, it is a performing art, like in a way of similar to performing on a musical instrument, a piano. You are not composing, you are given notes, but in order to make it a lasting impression, you need to be an artist. You need to be not only skillful in technique, you need to project yourself and know how to do it into your form of art. And in this sense, church art or sacred art is even more responsible, because when person comes to the concert, well, can be moved by whatever it is, it's okay. But when person comes to church and doesn't receive something like he expects that it's not moving, it means that it might be, it's not true representation, because if it's true, it's supposed to put somebody in a state of that silence when no words are possible, in a like a speechless state of mind, or a state of awe. So all of this represents, you could say, stages of spiritual development. We start with a more earthly colors, like darker colors. You wouldn't see that in the finished icon, because it's first way of preparing it. There are many layers there. Okay. It's the first one, alternating what we called, it's like painting itself, or a float over it. It's a liquid technique. Egg with some water. Egg, we call it, we put egg in some white wine for acidity, little bit. And then highlights is a light, is very interesting progress. The very first, well, this is finished icon, but very first light that is approximately in this area would look similar to a Renaissance painting or a regular painting, because it will show folds and it will show shapes and all of this. Then later on, after it, we put a float of paints, a little brighter. And then we put, if you can see, some more geometric shapes or facets, which represents a light, not of the body, like bodily material life is the first highlight. Second is a light of the soul. It's like if you see that sphere that sometimes in a big arena with thousands of facets that sparkle. So in a soul that gains understanding through understanding, or it's revelation, what's in a different way, revelation, it's been revealed to you. You can read something 100 times, let's say, in a certain scripture or something, but then suddenly you understand it. It's been revealed to you.
Right. Versus the initial layers that create your foundation of knowledge, and then a little more knowledge, and then suddenly the whole of it.
You understand suddenly what's going on. Right. And so all of this accumulation of facets makes the richness of the soul when you see that somebody is very, not just intelligent, but has a depth in understanding a person. So it has many of those facets, and wise person versus just intelligent. So, and then there is still a third highlight too. It's like strokes of very bright, but little bit, that the brighter light, the less spot it takes. So
Right.
it's like a little highlights, or in Russian is a spiritual language. Some of the steps in iconography have their own words, and those last highlights, you cannot see it here probably, but on the angels under, you see special little strokes.
Yeah.
This is called Life-Giving Lights, or ojivki. Ojivki, it's from a word life. So it's something that, well, before, without that, it's dead. It might look nice, and you can put very nice makeup on a corpse and all of that, and they can even move, and like artificial, those robots or something. But, well, when God breathed, well, that's symbolically into Adam, then he became a living soul. Until there, it's not a living soul. So this is a, well, interesting symbolics here, that he wears this, has a staff. It's like we are all pilgrims here on earth. It's like we are walking, we are on a way. It's not to get to
the journey is the thing.
Yes,
not
it's a journey. It's not to get like too involved, even though we all forget about it, because there's a lot of interesting things and adventures are.
Well, I love that concept of going from, so I was even thinking about the brushes that you would be using for the lower layers, the darker layers. Your brush probably has many bristles.
Yes, it's a little bigger brush.
And then as you go,
yes, it's a tiny, sometimes 3. There's always natural. We use squirrel, and sometimes we use sable, and there's 2-3 little tiny hair.
And that's just so philosophic for how many people will attain that level
it's difficult. It's very peculiar way. Its lesson is given and repeated until learned. So it could be done many times. I had many times the same lesson, and when you're stubborn, that happens. And so when you don't trust your heart, and you think, okay, in a manual it's written this way, like how to behave and do and do. No, this say, okay.
Yeah, they forgot to give us manuals when
that's right. I always say,
I keep looking for
we needed to have a manual when we are born to know exactly what's going on, but this is a part of the game. We need to figure it out.
Yes, but then you became a teacher. So, as you teach this beautiful art form, you help others find their way as well. So,
and yes, certain things can be learned only in it's as we teach, we learn ourselves too, even better, because when you try to help somebody, I believe you cannot help if you didn't you didn't do all the mistakes. And some students, they come and say, oh, I want to start teaching. And even on the piano, I say I want to take 2 years of lessons and then start teaching. I'm laughing to myself, but or the same with iconography. Somebody asked us, well, you need to know all the mistakes, how to correct all the mistakes. And mistakes are plenty. You never know what kind of mistakes and catastrophes are coming, and paints are all over, and whatever. Different things, and you need to know. It's like you have to be a surgeon in a way. You need to know where to cut and how to put something. So it's a skill. It's a different skill to become a teacher, and like in any worthwhile endeavor, it takes time to learn. It's not a cheap, so to speak, instant gratification like
No.
modern society.
No, and certainly
Learn.
not every artist can teach. That is
Yes.
certainly true. It takes a different skill, but I find that it's a wonderful, wonderful way that many traditional artists, because of the nature of it being passed down from hand to hand, from generation to generation, many people who are deeply committed traditional artists are also teachers as part of their art form.
Yeah, and I can mention another thing which is important. We live in the modern times, and sometimes people of the good intention, you know what happens, like they want to preserve their art, but they wouldn't allow anybody to learn it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to, like a woman, that just secular woman cannot just come and start learning iconography like 200 years ago. You have to be monk or a nun. You have to have a special blessing of the bishop and special things. So you cannot just teach to anybody of a different religion or anything. It was so many restrictions, but we live in a different time. Anywhere it's different now. Whatever might have worked before, we take pearls where we see them, from wherever. We don't whatever decide, oh, this pearl came from a muddy river or from a swamp or something.
Right.
Well, it is a pearl. You clean it and it's a pearl. Of the prayerful discipline, as we say, there are three main form of prayer. That petitionary prayer, that is, well, it's a beginner's form of prayer. They think that they need to ask God, otherwise God doesn't know, but it's considered a beginner's prayer, because once somebody is becoming closer to omnipresent and almighty and mind-boggling power that is created us, then you start being in a sense of more like praising, but not in a sense of God doesn't have ego, like with which to appreciate our flattery, but it's not that. It's more for our soul, if we can be in that state of sincere adoration. Well, I think that's a word. So this is the second one, but the third one is that silence of Hezekiah, of silence in awe. So iconography, true icon, supposed to bring you in that silence. So it's a prayerful silence. It's a best prayer where no words are needed. So it's in that sense that you get completely different outlook of life, yourself. And for some people who are visual, it's very helpful, because in that 15th century, 16th century, when it was very popular, and many people in Russia, and I believe in other countries, were illiterate, so they couldn't read, but this was their nourishment, their spiritual nourishment, so they could see icons of those enlightened beings. That it was very helpful.
So of the different kinds of prayer, iconography comes into that last one, that exists in that space of charged silence.
Like contemplative. Well, it's an ideal. It's you have to be on that level yourself, so you could put all of those higher energies into your icon, and then somebody else could see it from that. Like
Right.
it's the same, like when you love the person, you don't have to tell the person that you love them, even though they might like to hear it, but you don't have to say it because it's obvious. Remember that some icons are miracle working, as we all know. They're mere streaming, weeping, and of course, God doesn't need any law. It's outside of law. And it's not that many in America, but there are some. Actually, we are blessed in our Scranton area. There are two of them constantly residing in one of the churches in Taylor, St. George, for maybe, I think, 10 years now. And so that's how it is. And well, it means without even any deep discussion that something was prepared for the spirit to come down. I know for a fact, while I've been raised in Kiev, there is a very famous Kiev caves lavra or monasteries with cathedrals that from 10th century, the very first way. I mean, it's normal for them. They just go, they have skulls for monks because they didn't bury them. Many, and they're mere streaming almost all the time for all this time. And monks going there with the ladle, and every day they take more. And so they're different level of what's normal.
Right.
Normalcy is completely different.
Right. It sounds like you're getting more skilled at tuning into that frequency that you're talking about, that you've been practicing your entire life.
Inspiration in spirit, being in spirit when something, well, when I play duets with my son, violinist, so this always puts me in that state. Of course, when he practices, sometimes he doesn't want to practice, but so even when he doesn't practice, he's beautifully playing. But
and anyway. you and your son play together quite a bit, yes?
We play sometimes. We used to play a few recitals at Marywood University, where I was used to be a freelance accompanist, and so they invited us to perform, and we enjoyed doing that. And I also played solo recital. Actually, I played in New Jersey. I played solo recital in August, just a little bit, piano.
Yeah, I thank you for sending that concert because I enjoyed it immensely, and I've listened to it a few times. And all that you speak of about the spirit inside of the music, I've known these pieces my entire life, but when you hear someone, as you said, inspired, it takes on a new depth that you don't hear when you're just listening to a recording.
And so. I can add, not only inspired, I consciously dedicate and ask him for me to become an instrument or conduit so people can be touched through it with his divine energy. And so I offer my skills to it because I still cannot decide between everything that I can do, what's my mission, how to affect people the best. So whatever comes, I don't seek usually.
Right.
Things find me like you found me, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't seek.
We have been so grateful that that you are living and practicing your art in our area, but especially that you are also teaching, because that is the way that we continue to pass down these really important traditions. That yes. in a world of digital age and so many things that are able to evaporate, it seems it's wonderful to pass down traditions that tie our hands and our bodies and into our higher selves.
And actually, we could say that there are certain things that are, just transmitted from person to person. And I'm happy when I can and while I can to serve people and to uplift them in a way that it's meaningful. Well, especially in this times that many people seek it, but
Right.
it's difficult time for many people, but it's challenging. Like for me, it's another challenge in life. So what?
Well, and as your story teaches us, please let's not be afraid of our challenges.
That's right.
Let's live our lives fully in the center, and it may be a doorway into something that we've longed for a long time.
Considering to be a light, and this is how many people become awakened. I mean, it's a classic textbook example. Many people need a crisis to become awaken and to think deeply why they live and what this is all for and what's important and what's not important and what's priority and what is not priority. So, well, this is how it works.
And we return then to some of our deeper roots, to our traditions, to those things that have sustained people over centuries.
Yes, yes.
And it's really interesting to watch those circles, and hearkening back to your, the circles in your hair, all of these kinds of traditional arts help us to focus in to something that brings us closer to our hearts. So we are so grateful that you shared with us all of these items. And honestly, as I said, we would have an entire month worth of programs to begin to scratch the surface of your knowledge of it. But thank you for sharing it with us today. And I know we'll have many other programs that people will get to learn from you and experience some of your art. So Nina, thank you for your time today.
It's my pleasure. To the glory of God. I'm trying to do what I can, and I'll be happy to share more. And I hope somebody will be inspired by that.
And may all of you continue to be inspired not only by this program, but by this entire series of Second Sunday folk artists that we have had the pleasure to bring to you through the support of the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. My name is Kimberly Crafton, and from Nina, from myself, and from all of the folk artists on the roster of the Everhart Museum's Folk and Traditional Arts program, thank you. Have a beautiful rest of your 2021, safe holiday seasons, and a very connected and artistic 2022.
And like he went out on a mountain. It's a mountain of heights of consciousness. It's not like, well, I mean, maybe he went to the mountain, but this is what it means symbolically.
Okay.
With climbing the mountain,
the different
level
levels
of, yes.
That's wonderful.